Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order for Monday, June 3rd at 4 p.m. We'll go ahead and start with roll call. Position 1, Carrie Stuckey. Position 2, Shane Corden. Position 3, Kate Rose. Here. Position 4, Eric Duklinski.
Here.
Position 5, Tom Jones. He is absent today. Position 6, Stefania Huerta. Here. And position 7, Vicki Biggs. Here. And our student representative, Nolan. Here. Okay. And Councilmember Marshall.
Here.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to item 2, approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion?
I'll move. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Hey, Carrie?
Yeah?
Before you do that, do you want to mention the
Oh, okay.
changes?
That's the only one though, Mikhail, the mayor's update? Okay, so we are removing item 5A, mayor's vision for today. That's going to be moved to our August meeting.
And we're going to tweak item C.
Yes. Well, it's not really descriptive on the agenda, so we'll just keep it on there. So yeah, with that adjustment, we'll go ahead and make a motion.
I'll do it this time. I move to approve the agenda.
Okay, all in favor?
All right.
All right, thank you. Item 3, approval of minutes for our meeting on May 6, 2024. Do we have a motion to approve, or did we have any questions? Okay,
Second.
all right, all in favor? Okay. Okay, item 4, public comment. We did receive several public comments. They were all in the meeting packet. I don't believe they're going to be displayed on screen today, but they are in your meeting packet. It looks like we had one comment in regards to Coochie Park Fields, and the remainder were commenting on item 5D, so we can save those comments for that item. Was there any questions, comments, discussions? No? Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and move on. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Did you have something?
Miguel's right here.
Oh, great.
Tom, can you hear us?
Tom, can you hear us? Looks like his microphone is.
Hey, Tom, if you're muted, you're muted. If you can hear us, unmute just to let us know that you're on.
Oh. Oh, there he is. Can you hear us, Tom? Okay, we can't hear you. We can see you. Still can't hear.
Hey, David, can you hear us all right?
I can hear you all right.
Great, thank you. Tom, can you give us a thumbs up if you can hear us?
Okay. All right. Well, I guess with that, we'll move on to our discussion items. So we'll start with item B, Urban Forestry Management Plan. Did you want to discuss the RFP?
Really echoey.
Yes, you're talking about?
No, not from my computer, just in general. Maybe the sound's just really high.
Echoing? It was. I can turn down the room volume.
Yeah, I'll just put that back a little bit. Okay. Did you get a chance to send out the? Okay. So Mikhail sent out to you the rough draft for the Urban Forestry Management Plan, RFP. And I can throw that up on the screen for us as well here. Okay. I should be able to see that, right? So you have a copy of this as well. You can look through. Keep in mind this is a rough draft. We're working through it, but give you the basic scope that we're looking for in the RFP. So RFP is request for proposal, and this is for the Infrastructure Reduction Act funding and the Forest Services Urban and Community Forestry Management Program. That is a $1.7 million grant that we received this year. The grant will fund additional staff. We've already hired on Grayson as an arborist apprentice, and we have postings for seasonal seasonal arborist interns. We also have a number of forestry resiliency projects that will be funded over a 5-year period of the grant. The kind of first step in this, though, is to develop and implement the Urban Forestry Management Plan. So this is a master plan that will guide our efforts with the grant, as well as continue on a direction for the department over a 30-year period. So it's meant to be a living document that will update. So as you go through this, we are looking for the plan to contain GIS update information that the Department of Natural Resources is helping us update, community process facilitation, and professional services in the areas of arboriculture and urban forestry. So the deliverables with this will be a plan that guides policy over a 30-year period, and then focuses on that grant implementation. So that's a quick overview of it. We have a little bit about Oak Harbor. There's some background about the grant funding, and the objectives here will guide the scope of the plan. Both Brandon and Bob Bailey, who's our city arborist, put these together. We scroll down here, get to the scope. So key components of it will be collaboration with partners around the community, Garden Club, Gary Oak Society, the Chamber, Main Street, Whidbey Conservation District, and many others that we'll put a list together with. Conduct stakeholder engagements, community open houses, get feedback from the community, with an emphasis on underserved and underrepresented communities and populations, those that don't normally have a voice in a lot of these kind of planning efforts. Because the plan is based on focusing on disadvantaged communities, we want to make sure that that voice is heard in the cross-section with stakeholder engagement. And make sure we remove any barriers to participation as able to. We want to integrate the current urban tree canopy assessment that's being conducted by DNR with Brandon's division, looking at historical trends and projections for planning needs and our urban canopy. Along with data collection, we want to identify hotspots where invasive species have the greatest negative impact, and how to formulate good strategies for resilience of our urban canopy. Areas where we want to see more plantings done. We know there are some key public open spaces and parks like Windjammer Park that we want to see more plantings for shade trees. And then identify clear projects and programs needed to achieve the goals of the grant over the next 5 years. We're also looking for assistance with updating the municipal code related to plantings and removals, maintenance of trees, especially in the right-of-way, where the financial burden for that maintenance is a little bit of a gray area. We want to try and take as much financial burden off of residents as possible. So updating the municipal code with that ordinance language. And then identifying opportunities for volunteer training, engagement programs, and things like that. We have a number of community partners that are interested in an Adopt a Park program and would like to participate in forestry activities. The Navy also being a key partner there. And then looking at opportunities for workforce training programs with an emphasis on students, veterans, non-traditional urban forest management type employees. And we really want to connect academia with the professional field. And that's part of the effort with hiring on interns, is to get that experience, get them interested in arboriculture and urban forestry and interested in green careers, and hopefully maybe even transition that into a full-time position. The city does support continuing education programs, and we've sent employees through degree programs and collegiate programs, and so we want to help develop our employees, and especially those in the community that would like to work for the city in furthering our urban forestry goals. We're still working on what the time frame for the RFP will be, and then evaluation procedures and such. So this is just kind of a first look at it. Like I said, it's a pretty rough draft, but take a look at it, and we'll be talking about it in probably all of our committee meetings, because we'll touch on different aspects of this grant program with our facilities, our maintained parks, and even our programs as well. But just wanted to see if you guys have any questions that we can answer about that, and any comments that you have if you had a chance to look through it.
So a question is kind of a three-part, but it's all the same thing, more clarification of information. So do we currently have arborists on staff?
Yeah, we have Bob Bailey is the city arborist.
Okay.
So we brought him on in that capacity last year, about a year ago.
Okay.
And now we have an apprentice, a full-time apprentice that we just hired on.
Okay.
Grayson, what's Grayson's last name?
Clements.
Grayson Clements.
And what does an arborist do?
You want to talk about all their activities?
Yeah, so the arborist, is responsible for the trees within the parks right now. We're hoping to get right-of-ways within, under our ownership as well. But he is responsible for diagnosing tree disease, any broken limbs or widowmakers up top. He does an assessment of the trees, and same thing with the ground cover underneath. Checks to make sure that they're healthy. If they're not healthy, can we prune something to help the tree shed the disease, or is this something that we have to remove so that it doesn't spread out anywhere else? He's everything about trees. Yeah.
Thank you, that's really helpful. The other part of the question is forests and urban canopy. So is there someplace now that I could go in Oak Harbor where I would see an urban canopy or the area that we would consider forest?
Yeah. So when we say urban forest, it really is all the trees within an urbanized area.
Okay.
Right. So street trees, trees in parks, things like that.
Okay.
We have a few what I would call like forested public areas. The largest and most prominent being the new Harbor Heights property, right? Which we're going to be installing trails and opening that up to the public. But the real goal is, as a Tree City USA, we have a couple of things that we have to do to meet those criteria, right? One of them is to have a tree board. The Parks and Recreation Commission acts as that tree board. But we want to get a little more in line with what some of those requirements are. We've kind of been on the fringe with some of those. So,
Okay, thanks, helps me understand, appreciate it.
yeah.
Any other questions? Okay.
So my question is, I see a lot of fantastic bullet points and plans moving forward. As far as timeline is concerned, the part where incorporating and encouraging the underserved to be a part of the planning, and also the collaborating with engaging the community, the youth, the veterans, perhaps juvenile court, just throwing it out there. Is there a plan in place or a timeline where those conversations start to happen, or is that going to be a little further down?
Yeah, they'll be incorporated within this planning structure. So the firm that we hire on, the vendor that we hire on to do this plan, will help us with best practices on how to best reach out and connect with those communities and populations.
Thank you.
I might have missed it, but did you say what the timeline was for submitting this and hiring?
No, so we and that part's blank. One of the things that I wanted to get from you guys today is usually we have a committee that helps us finalize the RFP and then works with us on reviewing the proposals that come in from various vendors, and we make a vendor selection based off that. They'll help us score those vendors off of criteria that will be listed in here. We don't have a set time frame for when we want to get a turnaround on this, but as soon as possible, because the clock is ticking on this 5-year grant, and so we're already in the first year. It took a while to get the grant signed off on, but now that we have it, we want to get those resiliency projects going. But this grant is what's going to inform what those projects look like. We have a good idea of certain activities we want to do, but kind of the larger ones. We have about $360,000 a year that we're going to be spending on projects. Is that right?
That sounds about
Yeah, about
right.
$360,000. And so we just want, this will be a roadmap for guiding how we implement those over the next 5 years.
Thank you.
In our couple of our workshops last year, we kind of broke out all the subcommittees, and one of them was tree subcommittee, and I only remember that because I was on it. But we hadn't done anything yet. We do have more members now, so I don't know if we're going to rework that completely, or if we're going to hand that over. If we're no longer using that, subcommittee at all, I just wanted to bring that back to mind with this question and the bullet point.
Yeah, I think we might have organized that when we were putting together the Tree City USA application. But yeah, we almost have a brand new board entirely. So definitely, if you have an interest on being on this committee, I'd love to get, well, let's see, 3. We can have 3 of you.
Do I have any volunteers? Okay, so Shane. Anybody else? Okay.
I'll also join.
All right, so Shane, Vicky, and Eric.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right, yeah, I'd volunteer for that.
Oh, okay, so we've got 4 now.
Go ahead, Tom.
Okay,
It's all you.
so it'll be Tom, Shane, and
And
Vicky.
Vicky? Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, so your homework will simply be look through that and kind of be familiar with what we're looking for at the RFP. But if you have your own thoughts on, it'd be really great if, we did this or that, come to some of those thoughts and any feedback on improving that. And we'll try to schedule something here soon to finalize it.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on that item? Okay, let's move on to item C, Parks and Recreation Department budget update, and this we were kind of altering.
Yeah, we're
right?
tweaking it a little bit, since
Okay.
we're still going through the operational budgets, and we want to be able to take that to council. Just want to go through with some of the new members, hold on a second. This isn't changing the screen. Actually, let's start with this one. Yeah, there we go. We're kind of getting you up to speed with what the city is doing. So we have a new budgetary process. It's called program performance budgeting. And there we go. So program performance works off of performance measures. And a performance measure is a numeric description of an agency's work and the result of that work. So performance measures are based off of data. They tell a story about whether an agency or activity is achieving its objectives and if progress is being made towards attaining policy or organizational goals. So in technical terms, a performance measure is a quantifiable expression of the amount, the cost, or other results of activities that include how much, how well, and at what level our services or facilities or programs are provided to the public during a given period of time. So things like quantifiable, when we say quantifiable, we mean the description that can be counted more than once or measured using numbers. And activities is just the work that we do. And results is what the agency's work is intended to achieve or accomplish for the public. So there's several reasons why we want to do these measures, monitor and report performance of the departments for the city. We measure a lot of things outside of work. Our kids get report cards on their performance, right? Performance of our investments, our water and electricity usage, utilities, things like that. We even monitor our health through a variety of measurements. But also, Washington budget law requires agencies to measure performance and report their measures. So what you see here is a draft of what the department has put together for our performance measures and programs. So these broad categories are recreational programs, facility rentals and leases, partnered services or ancillary services, and special events. And then public art, parks maintenance, parks usage metrics, and then we also have marina moorage as well as marina on land facilities or storage. So KPI is key performance indicators. That's what that stands for. So we talk about recreational programs as one of the performance budget programs. Those key performance indicators are things like total program registrations, how many sessions were held, how many different programs were offered, right? And so that will cover everything from our recreational programs, even some programs that we might do at the marina, anything that people register for. Facility rentals and leases, those key performance indicators will be things like revenues, number of rentals, number of special event permits, which measure everything from like league contracts to facility rentals, park rentals, special event permits, and different things like that, lease agreements. Partnered services will be things like revenues and application processes for agencies that utilize our facilities or we have an agreement with that aren't direct city programs, or those revenues don't directly go to the city. We maybe have a revenue share program with that. So examples that are our AARP tax services at the center, passport processing, which happens at the center, our commission, community partnerships, park service community partnerships, parades, different things that both the department gets asked to be involved with or sponsor or partner with. All those kind of things would be those sort of performance indicators. Events would be attendance at events, organization support. So all the events that are specifically hosted and run by the city. Public art will be things like placemaking, number of art sculptures. We might have maintenance in there as well. Parks maintenance, key performance indicators would be things like hours spent on maintenance activities, number of playgrounds inspected, vandalism response, new trees planted, things like that. So a lot of that forestry management plan implementation would be cataloged under here. Park usage metrics would be things like park attendance, results from satisfaction surveys, feedback from the community, different things like that that come from community outreach and interaction with the community. We'd also list things here like what is our number of acres per 1,000 residents. Some of those key indicators that have their standards set nationally by like the National Parks and Recreation Association, different things like that. Park inclusivity would also be a good measurement there. So these are kind of what we're setting aside as these programs. And everything we do within the budget, every line item from supplies, utilities, travel, training, repair and maintenance, all will have one of these program, a number associated with each of these specific overview programs associated with it. So what this does is it tells both council and the community a story of this is what we are providing for the community, and this is how our budget is going to implement and provide those services. That all makes sense so far? Any questions? I'll pause here once.
Yeah, are these bolded categories weighted equally, or are there ones that hold more weight than the others?
They're not really weighted as far as importance or priority or necessary budget. It's just it allows us to have a benchmark that we can look at year over year with how are we doing in these areas. And it's really more for reporting.
I mean, I asked that question in regards to budgeting. Typically, we budget towards, right, what matters the most, what's the highly weighted. And I look at some of those things, and some of those things are inherently more expensive than the others.
Sure. Yeah.
So I was just curious if there was weight assigned to it, knowing that there's going to be weight in dollars just by the cost of some of that, purely on an infrastructure basis. That was just a curiosity I had.
Yeah. So council has priorities that they're working on. They're not quite finished with it yet, hence why we're pushing off the mayor coming and talking about some of those. But those council priorities is what directs the overall direction for the department as far as project areas and where we want to put those resources. As far as these key indicators, looking back and kind of tracking how we're doing in these various areas, they take how we budget the line items when we get to the operational budgets, and then we just attach on to that where we're tracking for each of these. So the operational budget really isn't affected as far as allocation through these. It's more just categorizing and I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, segmenting out our areas of responsibility. Makes sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Not so much a question, but I can see the value of having these performance indicators and these numbers going the next step, going beyond the budget process and being able to describe what the impact is of that. So maybe that's a flavor for, gee, we've done so many of these, or we've had so much attendance, and the impact is like on youth is a lot more.
Yeah.
So I think it's great that you're doing the process and looking at these through different ways.
Yeah, yeah. So it's really a catch for service areas where all these things are going. So as we get a little more into the details underneath all of those, one of the areas that we're working on right now is capital projects. So I've shown this list before, kind of an early version of this, and I'll send this out to the commission so you can kind of get a closer look of it. We have numbers attached with the projects now and a little better description. So all these go into a capital improvement project form that will be put into the budget where you can read each of those descriptions. So these include, let's see, what we really want to put on here is dates, but these include our Parks and Recreation Master Plan, Recreation Center Feasibility Study, which we have $200,000 from the state for to implement later this year. Breakwater FDOC replacement, channel dredging, dredging mitigation, removing. So these are all the things that are required to dredge. We have to balance that with a number of environmental projects that help offset the impact of that dredging. EDOC repair, emergency electrical repairs is something that we've already completed. FDOC repair, log boom, marina improvements. These are things like new whalers, rub boards. You can read these in the descriptions. Power pedestal replacement, restroom remodels, shed space, feasibility study, office remodel of the harbor master's office, as well as the shop. 7th Street Avenue Trails, which will start with a feasibility study this next year, and then we'll do implementation the year after that. Athletic field renovations of our football field, as well as the ball field at Volunteer Park. Catalina Park improvements, the forestry management plan, and associated forestry projects. Fred Marsh Boardwalk, this is for improving access, ADA accessibility around the Fred Marsh area. Hal Ramley Park improvements and community garden with a potentially new location for that. Inclusive playground, lagoon dock and channel dredging there. Pickleball courts, playground play chips, which we've completed all the projects for this year, and we'll do another round coming up. Playground replacements, specifically at Ridgehaven and Sumner Park. Shoreline erosion protection, skate park renovation, which the Art Commission's working on. Smith Park improvements, Splash Park improvements, which we're finishing up now. Windjammer Park improvements, so this is just kind of general overall Windjammer fund, and projects like shade structures, improvements to the kitchens and pavilions, different things like that. Generator at the center, Harbor Heights trails, as well as a disc golf course, an arts plan, which is going on right now, parking lot at the center, replacing the siding of the center, replacing the flooring in the multi-purpose rooms, a vehicle for the recreation division as we're starting recreation programming to do those off-site programs, installation of a new AV system for events at the center, installing a new welcome sign for the city on the north and south end, new identifier sign for the center to be in line with the new city logo, and then a number of vehicle replacements and new equipment for the Parks Department to bring our parks up to a higher standard of care, and as well as our sports fields. So equipment for the ball fields as well as the football fields. So there's a lot there, right? So these are all projects that were, a lot of these new projects, we try to leverage city funds, which usually come out of REIT funding, as well as park impact fees with grant funds. So we'll go after a grant and then match that with, use those city funds for the match requirements for those if they have them. We have a number of other projects that aren't tracked under the capital project sheet, either because they're under $50,000 or other considerations that don't qualify them as what we call a capital project. And these are things like, a lot of these are kind of larger maintenance type projects that don't necessarily fit within the regular operations budget that we need to find additional funding for. Cement replacement along the docks, sign replacements, moving to a cashless operation at the marina with supporting infrastructure, expanding the Arbor Day event, improvements at Gateway Park for the aircraft displays, important new safety lighting, utility wraps, so that's an art project, Navy Flagstaff relocation for Memorial Park, art installations, improvements to the dog park, installation of the angel statue, improvements to our website, implementation of an asset management program for us to better track maintenance costs as well as plan for preventive maintenance, and then improving the overflow area at the center. So again, a lot of projects going on. We can do these plans like the art plan, the Parks and Recreation master plan, the forestry management plan. Those are all good planning efforts that kind of give a good framework to work within. But the budget really is our implementation plan, right? This is what tells us these are the activities that we are going to do. These are the goals that we will achieve within the next 2 years, right? And so we have a biennial budget in Washington State, so our budget goes for 2 years. These are the capital projects. We'll let you take a look at that. We'll talk about those more in the committee meetings. We haven't gotten to the point of working through the operational budgets yet, but we'll also touch base with you guys on that. As you look through this, if you have questions or comments, or you see something missing from this list of, you know what, this really should be a priority for the community. We really want to see a new commuter trail connecting the north side of Oak Harbor to the south end of Oak Harbor, from the marina all the way to Harbor Heights, whatever that is. Let me know if we need to put this in here. Keeping in mind that while we have a biennial budget, our capital improvement plan is a 6-year plan. So we're looking for capital projects that we want to include in this 6 years out. So that's a lot that we can put in here. And even if we're like, we have no idea where we're going to find funding for this, or this is kind of a really would love to have wish, something on there might be like a recreation center or the regional sports park or some of those really big type projects. If we think we really want to implement or make good headway with that within the next 6 years, we want to get that on this list. A lot of what makes these projects happen is just talking about them, right? Having them on there, getting council's thoughts and eyes on it, having discussions. The funding finds itself if you get enough momentum going with all these projects. So, and that's a lot of what we do with staff, is just finding the resources to implement these things. So, but none of these should be because Brian thinks it's a good idea, right? We want it to be the voice of the community that's leading out. This is what we want to see happen in the community. So you guys, as the Parks and Recreation Commission, really is the voice of the community as far as that goes. So talk with constituents in your areas, family, friends within the city. Let us know hey, here's the priorities, here's what council should be hearing as they develop and finalize their priorities as well. Any comments or questions?
I do, if you can hear me.
Yes, Tom, go ahead.
Okay, so I understand this is totally separate from the operational budget that's approved by the council. Does the council also approve a capital budget separately for the whole city?
Yes, yes, council will approve a budget package that includes capital projects as well as operational budget. I see David Goldman's on the line, our finance director. If he wants to, if he's able, wants to jump on and talk just real high overhead of the schedule.
Yeah, I was only going to talk if you said something wrong. So far you're good.
What? David's much more articulate than I am on budget stuff, but yeah. So it is a budget package that goes to council and includes those capital projects as well.
Okay, so then the capital budget identifies all the projects that are to be funded. It's not just an amount of money, a general amount of money that can be tapped as by priorities as we go through the budget cycle.
Yes, and some of those capital projects will list as, okay, we know that we want to go after so much money in grants to help fund that. And we might not be ready or have not yet secured those grants, so we'll just list that as unsecured, but we'll make a note of that. So we do put in each of those sheets how much the project is, where that money goes to for implementing the project, and what revenue sources are going to support that.
Okay,
Did that answer your question? Any other questions?
kind of. I can address it later. I'm not real clear on it, but that's fine.
Any other questions or comments about that? Okay. Did you have anything else, Brian?
No, David, do you have anything else you want to say just as far as the budget process and capital projects?
Oh, yeah, it's just part of the same process. The first 2 years of the capital process is actually included in the biennial budget. So that shows you, the amount that the capital project is going to be spending in the first 2 years and what revenues will be generated to cover those expenses. The final 4 years of the capital improvement plan, that's more of a plan. That's not really part of the budget. So that's kind of more of a, like, we're planning for the future. Yeah.
All right, thank you, David. All right, if there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and move on to item D, update on city council action for requirements for sale or other disposition of city real property.
I don't really have a presentation for this one other than I wanted to bring back to you. I don't know if you all were able to watch that public comment period and the presentation for the disposition of parklands. So those who may not be familiar with it, Ray Lindenberg with our Development Services Department had brought a discussion to council to look at modifying the ordinance around disposition of parks. So right now, in order for the city to land swap or sell or really do any other purpose for a designated parkland, that needs to go to the city voters to vote on that. That is, it's rare, it's not unheard of, but it does, there's pros and cons to that, right? So one that protects parklands from the city just doing whatever they want without really getting any feedback. But it also makes it very cumbersome for the city to be able to do things for the betterment of the city. I know we had an initiative in the last city I worked for to implement that. They had it as an ordinance, but the problem was, like, for our city, we were managing a cemetery, so every time we sold a cemetery plot, we would have had to have gone to the public for a vote to do that. right? So there are instances where it makes sense for city council to, make an informed decision on how to do those things. I'll say personally, so I watched it. I was at the Washington Recreation Parks Association conference during that workshop and got notice about all the public comments that were happening. So I jumped on and listened to some of those. The comments were pretty reactionary. I think without kind of understanding some of the reason that the city was looking to implement this. Like I said, there are pros and cons to it. I think that a lot of the comments were around a concern that the city would just, remove a park, which would never happen. There's no situation where I could see that happening. The other consideration is that a lot of the parks are locked in anyway. Anytime that the city accepts a grant for an improvement of a park, there is a restriction placed on how that land can be used. So it has to be used as a park for that recreational purpose into perpetuity. Washington is incredibly restrictive on this compared to other states I've worked for. Normally, it's only federal grants that place a designation on it for restricted use. So, for instance, if we ever wanted to break off a section of Windjammer Park and put in some more condos there, the city can't do that. They actually have to get approval from the state because we've accepted grant monies for improvements at Windjammer Park. Same thing with most of the parks that we have. Now, not all the parks have that state restriction placed on them because we haven't done a project or didn't procure that from donation, but a lot of those smaller parks where that's not the case were donated by a citizen, and in that donation, there's a restriction placed on it that it has to be a park for the betterment of the community into perpetuity or wherever that is. This item wasn't necessarily brought specifically just for the Hal Ramley discussion. So Hilton is looking at developing a property. They will, at their cost, be making improvements to the Hal Ramley Park. If you want to call it a park, really it's a plaza. It has minimal public use. Part of the development plan does remove a part of the food forest, and so we would relocate the community garden to somewhere else, whether that looks like a land swap or whether it's a fee in lieu or what that looks like. We were early on talking about, this is great that they want to make a park for the community and make this, a much more beautified, serviceable place. But it'd be great if we could just give it to them. So it's open for public use, but they're able to trespass, transients that are loitering or causing issues, or if we start having vandalism issues there, as a private property, they're able to do that. As a public property, we can't. People have a constitutional right to rest. Not that I want to remove that for anyone, but if they're causing problems, then it makes it a lot easier to enforce those issues. So that's just kind of some of my thoughts on it. I'm not necessarily for or against it. I can see both sides of it, but wanted to bring it back. After Ray presented what he was planning to do, we had some comment. Ray wasn't required to and didn't ask for any comment from either this commission or the planning commission. But I think it would be a good idea that the issue was tabled for further discussion, will be brought back to council. I would recommend, though, that we have a good discussion around it, and really look at it at all sides. There was a lot of passion in the community, but it's from a lot of the comments were from people that don't live in the city, which is kind of interesting. But we also have some special interest groups that really were heading up those comments. So as a representative body of the community, I think it'd be good for council to hear your thoughts and maybe even a recommendation, whether it's required or not, just to help with their discussion of this item. So I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I read through all the public comments. I watched all of the public comments from that meeting, and overwhelmingly, the impression seemed to be that people were afraid that the community would not have a voice, would not be able to voice their opinion. And that's not the case. They would still have the public hearing to be able to voice their opinions. I think there was some misunderstanding, miscommunication. And if I understood correctly, there's no place else in Washington that has this requirement, is it? Does Spokane? Well, that's what they said. That's what I was gonna bring up, was I looked up the Spokane Municipal Code and the Boise, Idaho Municipal Code, and they both indicate that they only require public hearings. So this would be in line with that. So I just think it was a matter of misunderstanding, miscommunication about what is actually being proposed. Personally, I would say I don't think an election is necessary every time we want to sell public property. So that's my opinion, but if anyone else has any comments, feel free.
Yeah,
So the ordinance is specific to parks, right? We can dispose of any other city-owned property. This one is specific to parks, and that was the only comparison that they could provide to us with Spokane. And my assessment is the same as yours, Carrie, in that it really was. It felt like people got the impression that we were going to be doing this behind closed doors, that there wasn't going to be a public comment period, that they wouldn't have a chance to speak up on this, and that there was really kind of an impression that we were going to do this for our own financial gain, and that couldn't be further from the truth in terms of city council. We stand to gain nothing by that. Our job is to do what is best for the community as a whole, and one of the reasons it got tabled is because there was a proposal for a no net loss of parks, which is, in my opinion, it's a great concept. Is that if we're going to dispose of one parkland, then we could potentially gain a park somewhere else where it could be a little bit more accessible. I mean, if we're talking about Ramaley Park, we have that park right across the street is Windjammer, right down the street is Flintstone. It doesn't make sense to put another park down there, but it would make sense to put a park somewhere else that could use a park. And so, right now, council doesn't even have that option. We can't look at doing a land swap. We can't look to sell that and then buy another one. It doesn't give us any option whatsoever in terms of being able to dispose of that and ultimately benefit our community, right? I mean, if we're talking about putting a hotel in our downtown business corridor, we only have one downtown business corridor. We only have one place that we could do that. And so for a little park to hold up a project like that is not in the best interest of our city as a whole, in my opinion. Being able to swap that land with potentially another park space somewhere else that would benefit our community as a whole, I think is advantageous for us. And to have that flexibility to be able to do that and still have the open public discourse, have the comment period, have all of that, and not have the cumbersome piece financially and time-wise of having to go to an election. And then, what I mentioned to one of the people after the meeting is that puts us as a city then in a position where we have to start to campaign for this if and then there's additional costs that go along with campaigning and time that goes along with that, and it's just not in the best interest of our community in my opinion. So thank you.
I agree. It seems unrealistic to do a full election each time we want to.
I think the positive I take from it is people got passionate about parks, and yes, traditionally we see the passion come out when mistakes are thought to have been made. Okay, but we had passion about parks, so let's take that for a win. Yeah, some of these people weren't from our community, but hey, people being passionate and excited about parks, even if it's for the wrong reason, great. We know it's out there. Now we know that it needs to just be communicated better so the passion gets applied appropriately to constructive things rather than some of this hyperbolic grandstanding and bringing up things that are not associated, like the chopping down of an oak tree, and bringing up these very painful to certain segment memories in order to sort of hijack the conversation. I don't think that was the intention. I think the intention was just to highlight the worry of a closed door meeting and what that could do if some sneaky backside, kind of thing was happening. And also the implication that this would be done in the interest of, or to benefit the special interest of some construction development baron. I mean, that's just not really a fair way to necessarily engage in this conversation. But conversations that are rooted in passion, sometimes things get said that maybe aren't necessarily fair in order to communicate the point. So we'll go with that. I think if we would have led with better communication about how this was going to play out, some of these comments, some of them, not all of them, would have been handled better. Unfortunately, the fear monster was created, and we saw the responses. Fear's a powerful motivator, and we saw that. But we have a big job to do to bring recreation up to where it needs to be to meet the needs of this community. And without having the flexibility for city council to be able to function, they're not going to be able to meet the goals and not be able to satisfy the hopes and dreams that a lot of people have for what this community would be. And I think this is one of those things that stands in the way of being able to accomplish that. And I really think that this board should make a recommendation to city council to find a way in which to do this and trust city council to come up with a really good way of doing this so that we can move forward. We can see the economic development. We can see development of parks and recreation and the arts and all these things that we need for this community. But I do think this is one of those little things that gets to be a big thing that's really in the way of progress, not for the sake of progress, but progress for the betterment of the entire community. Thanks.
All I want to add is that from a community standpoint, you heard one side, right? And that was it. And that's where the fear came. So in order to be able to do this and do it fairly, we need to educate on what you said about not being able to, sell off parkland that we have grants for, and just letting the community know that it's not a backdoor, thing, and we're not going to just start selling off parks, for development. And I think that's where the fear is that I know I saw it. There was a one-side thing on social media, and people got up in arms over that, and I don't blame them if that's all they saw.
I think that there can really be a power in transparency and in verbiage and how we translate things to the community with plans. I know that sometimes I'll have people ask me questions, and the way I'm speaking, they're just, I don't know what that means. What do you mean by, So I think that being a little more, when we're well on our way, because we just shedded more light on the situation and what it really is going to look like and the why behind the movements that are being made. And with the tighter communication, like you mentioned, I think that that would really be helpful moving forward. And if we can have maybe some baseline verbiage of what our moves mean, I think that might be really beneficial. I'm saying it like we can just come up with it, I don't know. But that would really be helpful, and just the transparency and acknowledging the comments, of course, and just saying, like, we see you, we hear you, we get it, it looks a little different. However, it's not what it is. So just the explanation is fantastic, I think.
Any other comments or questions?
I do think we need to remember that this is a different city council, different leadership than some of these other things that have happened in the past. And we're entering a new time for Parks and Recreation as well. We have, money invested in staff and a whole bunch of things that we've never had before. This is a new era. And as voters and taxpayers, I think it is beneficial to extend sort of the olive branch of trust to the city council and let them prove that our trust is warranted. Let's let them do something great. Let's let them do something to earn that trust. And if they don't, then the power of recall. You have a vote. We have a vote. And, if the city council doesn't make good on the trust that we extend them in this new thing, then guess what? We can vote to make them no longer part of that new thing and find people who, can meet the public trust. I don't think we're gonna have to worry about that. And I think slowing it down to make the right decision was a smart call, and only proves the fact that there's some trustworthiness there in the system. And I'd like to see that extended to this so that we can move forward as a community together.
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Tom.
I think we should also, I agree with everything that's been said. I think we should also promote our own organization, this Parks and Recreation Commission. when I came on it about a year and a half ago, Carrie was there, and she said, you know, you had to cancel like meeting after meeting because there weren't enough people to show up for a quorum. Now, I think we have very responsible, caring people. Not only do we have a quorum, we've expanded to 7 people from 5. And this could be a conduit for the public. They don't have to address the city council directly. They can address our group. And maybe that would be, you know, a better proposition for some of the public.
I'll just jump in on that comment. I agree with you, Tom. My recommendation to community or development services and Ray probably would be, he did come and do a presentation with us, but I would have liked to have seen probably more dialogue and vetting a public comment period through the Parks and Recreation Commission with an official recommendation to council, you know, come before that, just to vet out some of those conversations and have that back and forth dialogue a little more than development services presenting the ordinance and then hearing a big backlash right before council's supposed to make a decision one way or another on that, right? So yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I've heard a lot of in favor of the ordinance changes, a little bit of conversation about the proposed like land swap, maybe addition to that language. Is there anyone that has concerns with or is not in favor of those ordinance changes? I want to hear from all sides if anyone has thoughts on the other side of that.
I think the only thing that I'm not in favor in was the idea that was later getting tossed around about a land swap, as if acreage would be the determining factor of what equaled a swap. And I think rather it's amenities. You know, you can change up one of these postage stamp parks that we have for another one and gain nothing. And in fact, maybe make it worse because it's a even more difficult to maintain than all these pocket parks already are. But rather, if we're losing amenity, that we make up with equal and or greater in exceeding the amenities that we offer in the parks, not necessarily by square footage or acreage, but by what we actually offer. Because land, unused or improperly utilized is actually a hindrance rather than a gain. And if we add amenities to take care of the community, then we're doing a whole lot better than just gathering another potential lot.
Yeah, for those 6F designations that I mentioned before, like for federal grants, in order to do a land swap, you have to provide a property of equal value monetarily as well as recreational use. It has to have a similar recreational purpose and then have a value associated with it. It's not based off of acreage.
Correct. I'm thinking in situations where we would think about, though, eliminating a pocket park, which are already kind of manpower and budget frustrations, just, and then picking up another one of those simply in a swap maybe wouldn't be the thing that we've got to, the route we'd want to go as we've sort of collected these things along the way. I would say maybe that has become a disadvantage now just due to the maintenance that they require for the return on investment. So all I'm suggesting is if we could phrase the language as if we did something like that, think about no net loss of amenities rather than a park in itself, which could be compensated financially, I think, for improvements as opposed to simply finding another portion of land, which may become increasingly harder in the future as well, knowing that we are on an island and there's only so much of it. That was my only thought there, or my only potential pushback on that idea, which I think overall is a good one.
Yeah, I actually agree 100% with that. Was there anyone who disagreed with that sentiment in any way, or are we ready to make a recommendation? Barbara had a comment?
I have to talk to Brian about this. One of the things when we look at the ordinance, okay, it's very interesting that I wasn't here when Windjammer was before, But isn't it kind of interesting, when they made the ordinance, it was Flintstone Park, that they put that ordinance about it had to be the vote of the citizens. What happened between Windjammer and Flintstone? What do we have? We have condos. So it was okay for them to build them in 86, but all of a sudden 97, we're like, we don't want a hotel, we don't want to build it. So what's the backstory for that? Plus that roadway, from what we understand, I don't know when it came through on Bay Shore, so that's when they split it. My idea is maybe we should look at having an ordinance, give them some grace, have some ordinance and say any park over 1 acre, we will take to the citizens. Under, we're gonna have to just say, hey, that's the way it is. It's just an idea. But I'm saying, why did you allow something on the waterfront and then you're holding it up over here because they wanted to build a hotel? And so you could have contacted the whole thing. Now, there's older homes on Bay Shore that, you know, that's part of their land. But why did you do that? See, there's a backstory to this that we're not getting. We're just saying, oh, they want this. And we're not using that park. I mean, we're not. I mean, I could drive by it, I don't know how many times. So all I'm saying is, that's my input, is thinking outside the box. Why did this happen? Why do people, and we can't afford to have an election. I'm sorry. I mean, it's money and it's time of everybody, and we already have a massive amount of stuff to do. So that's all I have to say about it.
Thanks, Barbara. Yeah, are we ready to, do you want to make a motion? Okay, yeah, go ahead, Nolan.
I have a quick question. So you guys said like more communication for people. How would that like look like? Because you said you might have the guy in the meeting hold like a public comment thing, but like most people don't watch the meetings. Like I look at the YouTube views and it's like very little. Like I feel like most of it's social media stuff, right? Do we have like a Facebook thing for Parks and Rec? Like, do you guys have your own page? Is that how people found out about it? Because I feel like that's the reaction spot, right?
Yeah, we do have a Facebook page now for Parks and Recreation that was formerly the Facebook page for the center, the senior center. Although the information for this wasn't really on there, I think the backlash was after a newspaper article and like the community page having their own discussion with maybe information that wasn't correct. So I don't know how you fix the Facebook issue, but I feel like if we had better communication maybe with the newspaper, because I see over and over again, people only look at a headline and they're kind of notorious for putting out headlines that tend to rile people up. So I feel like if we had a better relationship with the newspaper on our end, if we could maybe give them get ahead of it with information, that might be an option. But I don't know how you.
Oh, sorry. It's very possible to have a good relationship with the people, individuals, and I say this with a newspaper person next to me. That doesn't mean that they're going to think of you when they write that headline, unfortunately. I think that's well said.
That's true. I just know that at least the Whitby News Times, I know that they've tried to contact the city and have gotten ignored or gotten no answers from who they're trying to reach. Not you, Brian, but just other people in the city in general. They've just had trouble in the past getting answers from anyone actually on staff or from city council. So I feel like we have an opportunity there to get ahead of it by kind of creating a better relationship. Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So to that end, we do have a new communications manager, and she'll be working towards that. Yeah. So Maggie will be on that and creating that. I believe she has a good relationship with them currently, and she can help to kind of share this information. And I know that the Facebook message has been relayed to her as well as you know, that's an opportunity to engage as well. So And I would just say, this issue is few and far between, right? It's not like council is being presented every day with an ask to sell a park or move a park or trade a park. I mean, this has come about very rarely. And so this is a very unique circumstance and one that I don't anticipate that we're going to have to address very often.
And Nolan, when I brought up the idea of communication, I was thinking when Ray first gave his presentation, kind of some of the effects that Brian said was that didn't ask for comment, we didn't get to have a discussion, which would have fleshed out a lot of these things that would have been like, well, what kind of parks can be sold? And then we would have heard everything that Brian just shared with us about some things can't be. You know, they literally just can't be, or they require state approval. And, you know, just so many of these different factors that would have scared away the boogeyman that started to exist with this thing, and we could have put a lot of that to rest. I don't blame newspapers for writing inflammatory headlines. They're trying to move papers in a time when it's not, you know. And social media is what it is. We have to consider these sources and understand what their purpose is. And social media tends to be, you know, the complaint board typically, you know, and it's not existing for uplifting and encouraging messages. That happens as a byproduct, but frankly, it speaks the common language of complaint, which just seems like the only language the entire world speaks. So that's that. But if we would have done better from the jump and had those conversations, and I think if we would have tried to maybe had a little bit back and forth with Ray would have been able to communicate everything that he knew that he didn't feel like he had time to say, and it would have cleared up a lot of this. It was one of those things where maybe Ray doesn't yet have the trust of us as a board because we're kind of new, like Tom highlighted. And so he just gave the basic, you know, brass tacks of it all. And unfortunately, that allowed for the passions to be stirred. So those are the kind of communication things I was referencing, just so we can do a better job with that critical transparency. And then city council doesn't have to spend a lot of time that they don't have and continue to extend their meetings late to deal with a bunch of stuff that frankly could have been dealt with at the start. You know, the ounce of prevention kind of thing.
Cool, thanks.
I just want to add to that too. So with that, with their timeline, getting all this done, do we feel confident in ourselves that we have educated the community on why the move is made, why this is what it looks like? Is there confidence now that we're able to feel great serving our community moving forward in this? Or is it, well, we have to get this done. Like, we've been sitting on this for a minute. You know, we kind of put out some information that was a little bit not the best, I guess. Is that the best? I'm not sure how to say it. Just information that wasn't, I guess, translated in a way to really shine light on things. So with that, and then here come a lot of backlash, some of the complaints, some concerns, and we've addressed them today, which I feel like we really hit some bullet points today. But however, are we confident saying that's enough for the community to feel heard and seen, and we can go, okay, let's do it. This is what we're doing. So that's just kind of my devil's advocate question, I guess.
I feel pretty comfortable about it, but I also went and hit the books pretty hard afterwards to kind of do some compare and contrast. That's partly just how my brain functions, though, so I recognize that I might be an anomaly. But it looks like Carrie did the same thing, so I feel like I'm in good company. But all we're doing is making a recommendation, and we can vote, and some people can vote no, or that they're not comfortable making a recommendation. So I think it would be good to do some form of action just to see where we're at. And that does send a message to city council, who's going to have a lot more work to do and a lot more thought into this and discussion that will, you know, finish or not finish the deal, so to speak. Whereas if we give them a mixed vote, great. If we give them a unanimous vote one way or the other, great too. That sends a message to help them with their work. And I think that would be helpful for them. Forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn, but I think that would be helpful to you and what you folks are trying to accomplish.
Yeah, ultimately, it's up to city council, so we're just providing a recommendation, and it seems like we're all kind of on the same page about this, so I feel comfortable making that recommendation.
I'm not sure how to word the motion, which is why I haven't made the motion yet. So give me a minute.
All right, no comment?
Yes, go ahead, Tom.
Okay, while you're thinking, Eric, again, coming back to our group and what role we play in this, I think it's important. And I'm not sure a motion saying that the Parks and Recreation Commission makes this motion to allow the city, to blah, blah, blah. The people, that'll get to the city council, they'll approve it or not approve it, or I'm not sure what they would do with it. As a public, the public would probably say, who is this Parks and Recreation Commission? And are they speaking for me? Is there some greater involvement? And maybe the motion ought to be, I don't know. I guess it wouldn't be a motion. It's just an opportunity for the public to weigh in with the Parks and Recreation Commission in a discussion format. And then from there, after we get that education piece, or at least offer of an education piece, we could make a motion based on something more than our opinions around this table. Does that make sense?
So Tom, so I've been on a couple of other advisory groups, and I would say like the Community Health Advisory Board is appointed by the commissioners, the county commissioners. They, the commissioners take that very seriously, that is an advisory board that's making a recommendation to them. And I think that really is our role, is to make a statement as a group. In fact, it's kind of exciting to see that we're at that point with something where we are taking that advisory role as seriously as we are.
Yeah, and I feel like we've all been provided the public comments. We're commenting on it now. This is an open forum. People are welcome to watch us live right now. People are welcome to be here. We don't have anyone, so I don't know how else we can get more feedback from the community on this item. So that's my take.
That's a good point.
And I do think by asking city council to proceed with this, they're going to proceed in discussion, which is going to allow a further layer of public comment, because they'll have a chance once the agenda goes out, if they're so civically minded to do so, that they can make another round of comments. And all these folks that were passionate about it before can be passionate about it with this hopefully additional information they've been provided, and they can sort of sharpen their pencils again and bring back their sharp minds to the task once more to provide further guidance in decision making.
Eric, as a council member, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Can I? Okay, sorry. Eric, as a council member, I guess I'm curious as to how you see the role of this group. As far as, should we be a group that flushes these things out? Or, as Carrie mentioned, this is an open forum. And should we just move forward with our best intentions?
I see this group as, it's an advisory board, right? And so the idea is if you vet this and you kind of hash this out, you talk about it, you have the opportunity for public comment, you receive public comment, and then you have the discussion, and then you make a motion for the council to approve this, then that's something that we take quite seriously. It's oftentimes difficult for the seven of us to listen to the arguments and to come up with our own conclusions, but to know that another board of 7 or 9 have also talked this out, and they unanimously decided that this was best for city council to approve, that's helpful, at least in my opinion. It's good information to have. And so we take the recommendations of the Planning Commission and the Parks and Rec Commission, the Marine Advisory. We take those all very seriously, because you committed quite a bit of time to vet this and to discuss it and then to make that recommendation.
Thank you.
Yeah, and like I said before, the concern seemed to be that people wanted to have a voice. And even with this ordinance change, they will still have a voice. So it's still addressing that concern that all of the public comments had. So I feel very comfortable making that recommendation.
Make a recommendation there, it would be for the council to approve ordinance 1999 would be the recommended motion.
So then I'd like to make a motion that city council approve ordinance 1999.
Do you have a second? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Okay, that passes unanimously.
So one idea, Carrie, if I may, is perhaps a press release saying that, you know, the Parks Commission has you know, recommended that City Council approve this, because then that just furthers the discussion, right? We're not looking to actually vote on this until July, and so that could possibly spur other public comment. The Parks and Rec will have their board meeting before council has their next meeting, and so, you know, potentially spur additional conversation about that, so. And
Thank you.
you can work with Maggie on that, I'm sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. That's
Yeah.
a great idea. Okay, if there's nothing further on that item, we'll move on to item E, subcommittee updates.
Do you want us to go first? Sure. Okay. So for the facilities, we had a conversation that did highlight some of what we just talked about. We're not going to go over that again. We had two items that took up pretty much all of our time. First was Gateway Park, which is where the aircraft are on the corner of Altfield and Highway 20. We had a conversation about that regarding an MOU that we got from the wing, I believe, about kind of, go ahead.
Yeah, through the base to the wing.
Okay, through the base to the wing, about what's going to go on with that park. The city kind of is caretaking the A6 that is there. It's on loan to us, and it's our responsibility to sort of take care of it. The A6B belongs to the base. So the conversation was really around what do we want to do with that space? How do we want to handle both our maintenance and what function does it serve, sort of in regards to our full, I guess, offering of parks. How do we view it? What should we do with it? How are we going to handle that? And then there were some other things just about how things are going to get maintained in different subcontractors and groups that might have a hand in sort of making the aircraft, at least the one we're responsible for, the A6, look as best as it can for an aircraft on a stick, okay? Knowing that it's not going to get the attention of all something that's on the active flight line, right? The conversation was really around, again, focused on what's the use of that. We kind of came to the conclusion that the current MOU that was offered maybe didn't have the tone of partnership that we were looking for with three parties involved, and knowing that having that many different groups involved in something can be pretty difficult. But it was, optimistically, it was a great first start at kind of having this conversation, or bringing this conversation back, as it had kind of sat on the back burner for a while. And so that's the positive there. I think we want to come back and talk to them about figuring out some more of the language there to make it more of a true partnership between the three groups sort of involved in it, and allow us to see how that fits in with sort of our parks master plan and what do we want to do with that, knowing that it really is from the north, sort of the first impression that you get that's not, you know, private residence or private business. Yes, we have the sign that's a little bit further down near, you know, across from like Diamond Rentals and near the hotel. But perfect.
I mean, first impression.
There you go. See, passion. So anyway, that was that conversation, and we'll continue to work on that. I think Brian is maybe going to work on something to go back to them about it, and we had some great comments from Shane, just from what he knows about having been there and been the CMC. And I don't know if you have anything you want to add on that. Okay, and then we spent the rest of our time talking about pickleball. We had some mock-up drawings of different configurations and amenities for what pickleball might look like. And we had a lot of really good conversation about what amenities do we think need to be there, what don't need to be there, how we think, you know, that money that would be best spent to provide the best experience possible for this pickleball. I don't really want to call it pickleball courts, but more like a pickleball facility there. It's really positive, I think, as far as what we've seen so far. And then it's going to be open for public kind of conversation and discourse. I think June 13 was the date, if I'm wrong on that,
Yeah.
Brian.
Was that the
had with
11th?
Dawn? Oh,
Yeah,
June
June
11th.
11th, okay.
Excuse me, June 11th. So there'll be kind of an open house regarding that at the center for people to have feedback on the different configurations that have been presented, and provide feedback just so we can design something that the community will not only be satisfied with, but enthused about and excited about, and knowing that it's going to serve the long-term needs of all the community and the current pickleball community as well. Is there anything else I missed, Brian? that you'd like to highlight?
I think you covered pretty much all of it. Yeah, we had a little bit of discussion on the proposed metro district. Talked a little bit about budgeting and equipment for renovation of fields. Yeah, no, I think you got it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have not had our next programs and events subcommittee yet. That's going to be this Wednesday. So that leaves our playgrounds committee.
Can I interrupt really quick?
Yes,
I have to go take my kids to swim.
Sure.
So,
that's fine. Thank you, Vicki.
So playgrounds. Our discussion centered around the inclusive playground. Ryan, can you remind me the name of the individual that was our guest at that meeting, from the woman from the community? Do you remember her name?
Yes.
Okay. That's okay.
Was it Dahlia?
Yes.
Okay,
Dahlia
okay.
Pierce. Thank you.
Very nice. I should have just asked you. So she was very interesting. A woman that has an adult a son who's has special needs. And she reflected on a lot of conversations and experiences that she's had over the years with him, and some things that would be great, speaking on his behalf. But she was also able to relay a number of things from the fact that she's involved in all these other groups of people that have disabilities and special needs. And we had a lot of discussion about what would be some of the things we'd want to consider or include in an inclusive playground. Had a drawing, kind of a mock-up beginning of a drawing of what something might look like. We talked about the idea of having a theme, which would be super fun down the road. There'll be many, many more conversations coming up around this. Again, community, invitations for community to provide their input. And just looking at that opportunity for something that's all ages, and how do you get folks together and create experience, and also create unity and decrease isolation in a community, and really using the inclusive playground as a place for people to gather. And we've even had further discussion about programming around that, about inclusiveness and people being united and being able to come together to have fun, to play. So, anything else that I missed, Brian?
She also talked about some interesting ideas. I know council has discussed before ADA access to the beach.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that she had encouraged city to look into, whether it be beach mats or even beach wheelchairs that could be on loan, maybe at a nearby facility at the park.
Mm-hmm.
This is a segment of our population that exists that don't get to have the same recreational experience as everyone else. And I really hope by the time my time here is done that I have made a substantial impact on play for all, accessibility for everyone to have the same opportunities, and there's no barriers to participation. So
yeah, I love that, and I love that we've made a concerted effort in that direction. I also really appreciated the fact that she came to the table as a parent of an adult, like in his 30s. And because I know we'll also have many opportunities to have parents of children that will come. It will be interesting as we go down the line to see how many more adults and sense of, how we can gather a sense of what adults will need that are in that population.
Thanks, Kate. Okay, did we have any other comments about subcommittees? Okay. We'll move on to item F, Parks and Recreation Director updates.
all right, so just elaborate a little more on what Eric was talking about with the pickleball public engagement for the whole of the group. So we're looking at June 11th to be held at the center at 6 p.m. We'll not list an end scheduled time, but Don said that he's anticipating the presentation about approximately an hour and 15-minute presentation. That time frame is heavily dependent on the number of questions and community activity that we do. We will have 4x5 display boards with differences highlighted between the options, and Dawn will be there to answer questions. he's gone through this process quite a few times, so he's fairly familiar with it, and we have good faith in his ability to run a good engagement session. Marketing is something that will be really important. It's a very fast turnaround time. So I know South Woodby is we're sort of twin cities with this project. They're kind of going through the same thing at the exact same time, which is nice because we can piggyback and get some cost savings doing it with them. But I know that they were sending out mailings and doing social media blasts for the meeting. It's going to be a little too fast for us to do a lot of mailings, but we can do flyers at key locations, hit social media really well, do a public service announcement, and then inform local organizations of the meeting as well, which really partnerships with, we have so many great community groups that are just awesome at getting the word out that can really help us with that. One of Dawn's biggest concerns that came out from that, though, is the need to protect the budget and set realistic expectations with everyone. I think it's going to be, we will get a lot of feedback, but you know, I think everyone's going to want to say, hey, could we make this an indoor facility, you know, fully lit with, you know, a concessionaire on hand or whatever that is. Hopefully we'll set a level of expectation, and with the caveat that, you know, this is not a one and done, right? This is a first iteration and foray into building out a comprehensive not just pickleball, but comprehensive recreational facility offering. So this will not be our only pickleball project in the community. You know, I think doing a project like this, seeing it succeed on time, under budget, with strong community support, and then seeing strong community utilization of the facility, that's the equation you want to take back to council when you do the next project and say, hey, there we go. Here's proof of concept. We know we can do this. We can do it with minimal impact to any tax funds, and we have strong community support, and these facilities are a success, and we'd like to see more of this in our community, right? RCO presentations are happening this week. We just gave one this afternoon for the WWRP grant, which is a $500,000 grant for improvements of the ball fields. So this will take care of that phase 2 for ball field improvements. We'll go after a similar grant. In fact, it probably will be a different one that has a higher cap next year for some of the other athletic facilities as well. The other one that we'll be doing presentations on this week is the LWCF, Landmark Conservation Fund, for the inclusive the inclusive playground. Yes, that is that one. And that's that one is a, is that right? Yeah, 731, I think $1.3 million project. 700,000 from the grant. There's a 400,000 city match, and 150,000 from community donations. So we'll be doing that presentation. These are technical reviews, so they give us feedback before we do the final presentation to the state. Both those grants we get notice of award in October, with work to happen the following year in 2025 through 2026. We have our facility tour with the Naval Air Station finally, with the MWR, which stands for Morale, Welfare, and Recreation facility. So that'll be Wednesday from 2 to 4. And we have our the 15 passenger? I don't know. We have our van bus for taking whoever would like to participate in that. We'll have a couple of staff as well. I don't know if Lyft has sent out an RSVP. Yeah, okay. So just make note of that this Wednesday at 2 o'clock. We're also looking to do a tour of the Girl Scout building. I think I had mentioned this before. The Girl Scouts are looking to vacate that building, possibly just donate it, turn it over to the city. We want to take a look at the building and then have some discussion with them on what an updated lease agreement would look like. I think we'll, I don't know, maybe we'll default that to the sports facilities committee, or maybe the parks and playgrounds committee. I don't know. We'll talk about it in committee, but we'll get that scheduled soon and if you're interested in taking a look at that space and imagining with us what that might, what we might be able to do with it. I appreciate some feedback. Brandon and I are presenting to the Garden Club at Windjammer Park on the 11th next week. I think it's Tuesday at 10 o'clock. Just giving an update on what's happening in parks. And so kind of similar to the council's annual report. We'll talk about what's been going on in this last year since the creation of the department, what's on the horizon specifically with parks improvements. We'll talk a bit about capital projects. And then the last part of it is, other than just us saying, hey, here's what we're doing, and them kind of judging whether they like that or not, and head nodding, we're going to have a call for action and talk about ways that the Garden Club can partner with us to help bring our level of service and the aesthetic value of these public spaces up to the next level. A lot of times we hear, like, why don't we maintain parks? Well, we do maintain parks, but, just like a car that, you can wash it to keep the corrosion off, you can check the tire pressure and change the oil, but after, 50 years of hard use, it's time to replace a few things if you want to keep it going, right? So, and we need good partners in the community to not only replace those things, but then once we do it, keep it at a really nice level of care that the community can be proud of. On the council agenda for tomorrow, we have the Fort Nugent Flyers Agreement. This is just a continuation of the activity agreement with them. So they're a RC airplane club that utilizes Fort Nugent Park when leagues are not in play. We made just a few tweaks to the agreement that brought it in line with their own rules, as well as loosened some of the restrictions, and just they're allowing them to utilize the park during open hours when league play is not in session. And that, I believe, is on the consent agenda with council. And then we also have the naming of Freedom Park as well. We'll have 2 classes here, so there'll be a lot of people, but it'd be great to have some representation from the commission if you're available to be there for it, since it is a motion recommendation to council to designate the park. We did take this to the mayor, who loved your recommendation of Freedom Park. With that park being adjacent to the Navy, we feel like it's a really good opportunity to get some ownership help from them, and with maintenance of those trails and the disc golf course, and really kind of highlight the community support of our military community families. And so, as I've kind of chewed on your recommendation, I like it more and more. I think it fits really well, especially for the location it's in. And also, the mayor loved the Slippery Squirrel name, and so we did kind of a secondary award of recommending the trail system, the educational trail system, to be called the Slippery Squirrel Trail. So that's going to council tomorrow. Yep. And then just, I just want to thank you guys for being awesome. I mean, there's not a lot of commissions that put in all the amount of time. Not only do you do commission meetings, but you do subcommittee meetings, you volunteer for activities, and you teach classes, and you help us with special events. This is far and away a huge evolution from the way this commission, when it was just the Parks Board, operated before the creation of the department. We've asked you guys to step up, and you have in a big way. And I think that shows with what we're able to get done with the community and the department. So thank you for your support. Thanks for all the time and effort that you put into considering these items, to having good dialogue around it, to making recommendations and supporting council in their decision-making process, and just, thanks for everything you do to, make me look really good. It's a lot to do with your guys' involvement, and I'm really grateful to have a commission that works as hard as you do, so thank you. That's all I have.
We're really thankful to staff too. You guys are amazing. 2 years ago, this was non-existent, and it's just been above and beyond what I imagined. So I'm really thankful to staff too. With that said, do we have any other comments, questions?
I just have some more appreciation. When you say in this last year, and you mentioned year and year, and that word keeps coming up, I think, in 1 year, like all of these things are happening in 1 year. And it just, sometimes I pinch myself when I think about all the opportunity that exists for the residents of Oak Harbor now. So I just really want to applaud you for everything that's happened in 1 year. That blows my mind. Yeah.
All right, so item 6 is member comments. Do we have any comments?
I have a request, if that's okay. And it's kind of a selfish request because I coach softball. So when you guys mention, or when we mention that the ball fields have this funding for upgrades, I get a lot of, oh yeah, our softball field. I'm like, no, that's not us. So if you don't mind throwing an emphasis on the baseball fields, it would save me a lot of, and only because I really don't have the knowledge on the difference between the two, so I can't even inform them the best way I can. So just until I learn more, if you can just emphasize that it's the baseball fields, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback. We'll do that. I think, transparency with what we're talking about. So, I do want people to be excited and not feel like, oh, we're not going to. The softball fields need a lot of love. They're even worse condition than baseball fields. The main differences between the two are the city owns one of those fields at Volunteer Park, and the others are school district property. So we do basic maintenance of the fields, but we can't do renovations on school property without some kind of agreement with them or something like that. It doesn't mean that we're not able to do that, but we would want some buy-in from the school in facilitating that. We are going to go after grant funding next year specifically for the softball fields and the football fields. The other difference with those is that because of the clean water facility project, we have a fund for park improvements at Windjammer Park, where the baseball fields are. And so we're able to utilize some of that for matching some of these grants that we're going after. So it makes it a little easier when you have a little bit of funding already to go and get a lot of funding for a project. That matching fund doesn't exist for the football field or the softball fields. We have a capital project called Athletic Fields.
That's it.
And all it says on it is unsecured. There's no funding source yet. So in this budget, we'll be coming to council with, hey, this is a need. We'd like to see you support the rest of these athletic fields. And we'll work around different ways that we can do some creative alternative revenue sources to help with that.
I really appreciate that. The fields have been looking great, by the way, and you just did my work for me, so I'll say go back to this video and go to the end and listen to the last 45 seconds that you just said. So thank you so much.
Okay, do we have any other member comments? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Brian, maybe you can save me some time tomorrow. The Flyers contract. The Flyers contract expires at the end of this year. Is that right? The one that we're going to approve on the consent agenda tomorrow? I mean, why are we only doing 6 months?
I think it's already expired. I think it expired in March.
I think it
or
did,
April,
yeah, but
something
we're
like
only
that.
going to renew it through December.
Right, and we just want to get it on an annual basis.
Okay.
So, yeah, we'll do it through that, and we'll do another renewal for 1 year from that point forward.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to item 7, determination of future agenda items. Did you have something?
Yeah, I'd like to have the mayor come and share his vision. No, I'm kidding. Get that in August. I think we're moving at such a rate, though, on this that we are finding ourselves at a lack on this side of the table of determining agenda items. And I'm hearkening back to something I think Tom asked for a handful of months ago, but was there anything that city council finds pressing that you'd like to make sure you see on this agenda for conversation so we can do any advisory stuff? I guess I want to put the ball back into some other folks' court to fill out the agenda.
I don't have any from a council point of view. I think from a personal point of view, I would like to see discussion about how we're going to expand parking at Fort Nugent, for example. If we're going to be adding pickleball and adding more people there, how are we going to facilitate that? And that's a discussion we've had. And so maybe looking at how we're going to expand that parking lot or revamp that parking lot. And then another discussion for Fort Nugent is lights. I mean, we don't have right now a facility where kids can play in the fall past a certain time, and that would be a benefit for soccer and for football and for people that want to be out there in the evening time. If we are not going to have a regional sports facility or a recreation center for some time, then how can we best utilize the parks that we currently have? And I think that's one way that we could. And so.
I'd like to put Nolan on the spot for a second and ask you, based on your interest in being on part of this group, was there anything in particular that you were thinking in terms of parks and recreation for the city of Oak Harbor that you'd like to learn more about, hear more about, have somebody come in and talk about?
Well, my big project was the community center, rec center. That was my thing. But it seems like that's already working its way through the system, if I'm not mistaken. Like we got the money for the feasibility study. It's just, that's right? It's like, it's doing stuff. I mean,
That's a good point, Nolan, though. So, you guys really helped get the ball rolling on getting connected with that and getting that ask. That's $200,000
Yeah.
of, money that the city's not having to pony up to try and do this feasibility study and get a lot of questions answered for council on how to go forward with this. So that money becomes available in July. So it's a good point that that's something that we'll want to start having discussions on, developing an RFP for that feasibility study and what goes into that scope. I think I've shared before some of the items that we have kind of a menu of items and kind of understand what the cost of each of those would be. So we're going to have to sit down, maybe we do it as one of the subcommittees. And if you'd like to jump in on one of those subcommittees, since we're getting into summertime, it'll work a little better with your schedule. We'd love to have you on that, and we could talk about, well, what are the answers that we want to, what are the questions that we want to get answers to with a recreation center, and that's what's going to develop that scope. So thank you. We'll put that on a committee meeting and probably should throw it on a future agenda item too.
okay. What subcommittee? That would be facilities? That's a subcommittee, right? Yeah. So do you guys, sorry, I don't have the scoop on it, but do you subcommittee guys have like an agenda that you guys have, or is it just like informal, you guys meet and discuss stuff?
It's relatively informal. We can give you, Brian could probably send out invitation for the meetings so that you know when they are. If you want to join on any of them, really, you can join in.
Sure.
Yeah.
If we end up moving past 3, though, we have to notice it because it's an official meeting. It doesn't mean we can't. Is it 3? Oh, no, never mind. Join in. You're good.
I had 2 things. In the packet, there was this plan for the soon-to-be-named park, Freedom Park. On the bottom, it had scheduled spring 2024 processing contract and completed plans for the trail system and disc golf courses. Are those plans completed?
They're in works. So we have the agreement completed.
Oh, okay.
With Dynamic Course Design.
Okay.
And we have a site visit tentatively scheduled here in a couple of months.
Okay.
So we're getting a start on the design process a little bit later. It just took a while to Eric McCabe was pretty busy with other activities, but yeah, we're getting rolling.
Okay, so we'll hold off on that for a while. And then my other question was, our next meeting, are we going back to the second Monday at 10 a.m. or are we sticking with
Yes.
first Monday?
Oh, first or second?
So,
We changed back the timer. We changed back the date.
so, the plan was to go back to the normal schedule, the second, Monday at 10 a.m. unless, but that's completely up to you guys. We can change that by a motion, so.
That doesn't conflict with my schedule, so yeah.
Does that still work with your schedule, Brian, or have you adjusted to this new?
Yeah, no,
Normal.
that's fine. Since it is the second ones. Yeah, since it's during the day, that's great.
Okay.
I have, and I feel like I'm just devil's advocate all the time, but I have kind of conflicting feelings about it because some of the community members I've spoken to feel that during the day, it's really hard for them to come. If they do, everything seems to be keyboard warriors. But if they're able to show up physically, it makes it really hard for them during their workday. However, it is the first all-star practice of the season for softball, and I'm the head coach, and it started at 5:30, and it is now 5:52. So, I'm still conflicted. Even with having that obligation to something in the evening time, a part of me still feels like keeping it later can allow, if in the event someone wants to come, they have the ability to come in and kind of speak their voice.
You also have the opportunity to say that you do have a topic of discussion that you feel like the community is going to be involved in. We can change, just a meeting or hold a special meeting in the evening. You have that ability to do that too. So it's completely up to you when you guys want to meet.
Yeah, I think that's a better option if there's a specific item that we know we're getting feedback to have a special meeting or to shift it just for one. I think in general, just keeping it at the original time, correct me if I'm wrong, seems to work best for the majority of us.
So are we adjusting then for 2 months and potentially having to adjust back in September if we get a new high school student? Or, yeah, so I mean, realistically, are we just doing a 2-month shift just to shift again? And does that create then more public confusion as to when our meeting times are?
I guess that depends on if we get another student member.
At what point do we kick Nolan out? No, you just graduate to a full voting member, right?
The term is due end of August.
End of August, okay.
Putting out solicitations.
That's a good point. If your intent is to try to not only have a student member, but accommodate their schedule. I know we had talked about having discussion with the school to see, hey, can we get release time for them to be able to attend these meetings for credit, for class credit? Barring that, it really is depending on how much you want to accommodate that.
Well, I think that's a discussion worth having with the school. I just know my experience growing up in high school, we were excused for things like that. That was not a problem at all. Of course, I lived in a different city, I went to a different high school, so I don't know, but I think it's a conversation worth having with the high school.
Also, it depends on the actual youth, the student. The student schedule could be, they can be doing hybrid classes, they can be just maybe even doing all online and still be very involved in the community. So it's something we can adjust, but I totally get the consistency of meeting times because it can get very confusing and what do you mean? So, yeah. But it does depend on the student.
I think for now, my opinion is we should go back to our original time and then we can cross that bridge when we get there in the fall with a new if and when we have a new student member. So our next meeting then will be the second Monday in July.
Yeah, July 8th at 10 a.m. And yeah, so you had, that was the normal time. You had made a motion to change these last two meetings, so, yeah, if you want to put that on for discussion at another,
Yeah, maybe
Maybe
we
at
should
your
add that
August
to the
meeting?
agenda for next month's meeting, just to figure out how we really want to standardize all this, but have a full discussion when it's not almost 6 o'clock.
okay.
Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, let's go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody.